Humanity had always been the oddity in the Alliance, a coalition of interstellar species that united out of mutual necessity rather than any real sense of kinship. Each species brought its own strengths, military might, technological prowess, or rare resources. Humanity, however, brought an unexpected quality, a persistent belief in diplomacy, even when it seemed to gain them little respect among their allies. Humanity was willing to negotiate endlessly, constantly navigating the conflicting interests of species that were often aggressive or aloof. Humans became known for their seemingly boundless patience and their frustrating tendency to avoid direct confrontation. To the others, this was seen as a kind of weakness, a refusal to assert dominance or power. They called humans soft, murmuring that Earth had raised a species too passive to survive the galaxy's realities. Yet, behind this label of softness, humans held to a quiet strength. They believed their patience was a form of wisdom, not cowardice. In their view, peace was something worth bending for, even if it meant conceding or compromising to prevent needless bloodshed. Time and again, humanity held back, absorbing insults and provocations from species who were more than willing to test them. They had endured it all: the skepticism, the ridicule, and even acts of blatant disrespect, firm in the belief that the alliance was worth the cost. But it was not to last. The incident that changed everything started as a skirmish, or so humanity's leaders hoped at first. A neighboring race, the Darek, had long been testing boundaries with subtle provocations, small infractions that could be overlooked or smoothed over. Yet this time, they had overstepped dramatically. In a series of attacks along the border of human-controlled space, Darek forces destroyed a civilian transport vessel, carrying over 100 unarmed passengers, including families and children. The news sent shockwaves through humanity's ranks. Diplomatic channels flared to life, demanding explanations, demanding justice. But the Darek, emboldened by humanity's history of restraint, responded with indifference. They refused to apologize, justifying their actions with the claim that the vessel had violated territorial boundaries. They dismissed the outcry as the overreaction of a species too sensitive to understand the harsh realities of interstellar politics. For once, humanity did not back down. Their negotiators pressed, meeting Darek officials with a cold insistence. They demanded an investigation, restitution, anything that could ease the outrage that was spreading like wildfire among their people. But instead of engaging, the Darek grew hostile, doubling down on their rhetoric and dismissing the incident as a minor casualty in a necessary show of strength. Humanity was cornered. Diplomatic options, which had always served as a path to resolution, were running out. This wasn't the usual friction that could be pacified by a compromise or a reluctant apology. The Darek had made it clear they would not yield, and they did not care to appease a species they viewed as inferior. Among humanity's leaders, a bitter realization set in. They had given their trust to the Alliance, they had shown their strength through patience, and they had respected the customs of other species, believing it would earn them the same respect in return. But now, it was painfully evident that respect had been mistaken for passivity, and their restraint had only encouraged further disrespect. Humanity's patience, which had been their guiding principle, now looked like a burden, a miscalculation that had led them here, staring down an enemy that had shown no remorse. In private council rooms and across secure communication lines, human leaders debated their options. The discussions were no longer about reconciliation, but about survival. How many times had they bent, compromised, only to be met with disregard? The cycle had to end. They could not continue to yield, to watch innocent lives be treated as collateral for someone else's ambitions. The world watched as humanity came to a decision, one that many feared but could no longer avoid. The ultimatum was clear. If they did not act now, they would be trampled, forced to accept their place as a species with no backbone, no dignity. Or they could push back, reclaiming the respect they deserved, even if it meant casting aside their cherished ideal of peace. For the first time, Humanity's collective patience reached its breaking point. The resolve hardened, and the message was sent. If the galaxy would not respect humanity's strength, then humanity would make them remember what it had cost to push them this far. Humanity's leaders gathered, their usual calm and measured discussions replaced by a charged sense of urgency. Every sector of government, every branch of the military, and every critical mind in their society had come to the table. For years, they had avoided decisions that might lead them into direct conflict. But now, in the wake of the Derek incident, they knew there was no room left for negotiation. This meeting was no longer about whether to act. It was about how. The most senior military strategist, General Kalen Ward, spoke first. He was a seasoned leader, known for his commitment to defense above all else. His voice carried a quiet fury as he laid out the current threat, the ways in which humanity's territories could be exploited, the weak points that Derek and others could use to press forward if humanity didn't make a stand. His view was stark. They could no longer rely on diplomacy alone. This was a moment to protect their people and show the galaxy that humanity was capable of fighting back. But alongside him sat Minister Emilia Yara, a politician known for her unwavering commitment to peace. She had always believed that cooperation was the only path forward in a galaxy as diverse and volatile as theirs. Even now, she felt the weight of this choice, wondering if there was anything that could still be salvaged through words. Yet, looking into the faces of her fellow leaders, she knew that sentiment was fading, replaced by a collective recognition that humanity's hand had been forced. Others joined the discussion, technologists, scientists, social leaders. Each represented the unique facets of humanity: the will to survive, the instinct to defend, the drive to innovate. They realized they were not merely defending borders or resources. They were defending a way of life, their principles, and ultimately, their identity. They were done bending, and as the decision crystallized, a grim unity settled over the room. This was no longer about just politics or strategy. It was about survival and the right to live without constant fear. The alliance, though wary, had been watching. Humanity's shift in tone and resolve sent ripples through the galaxy. Allies who had once counted on human restraint and peaceful methods were now uncertain. Some species condemned humanity's decision outright, calling it reckless and unnecessary. They argued that humans had always been the ones willing to talk, to seek solutions that didn't involve weapons. To them, this sudden change seemed dangerously unpredictable, as if humanity had betrayed the very principles they had long claimed to uphold. Others were more sympathetic, acknowledging that any species would have reacted the same way if pushed to such an extreme. They respected humanity's right to defend itself, though most stopped short of offering active support. Caught between their need for stability and the knowledge that humanity had been wronged, they offered little more than words. In the end, humanity stood mostly alone, with only a handful of lesser allies extending modest logistical aid. If isolation weighed heavily on them, it didn't show. Humanity had made its choice, and the days that followed were marked by a collective mobilization like none before. Factories that had once produced civilian goods shifted overnight to manufacturing weapons and armor. Engineers and scientists worked day and night, developing new technologies and refining existing defenses. Civilian volunteers poured into recruitment centers, joining the ranks of those willing to protect their home. Everyday people transformed, shouldering new roles with a solemn sense of duty. Farmers, teachers, scientists, artists, they all took up arms, training with the same intensity as career soldiers. There was no fanfare, no celebratory rallying cries. Instead, there was a quiet, determined resolve in each of them, a willingness to protect what they valued most, even if it meant sacrificing everything. For the military, this sudden influx of civilians brought challenges, but it also inspired a fierce pride. Here were people who had never held a weapon, who had never trained for combat, willing to put their lives on the line for the greater good. Officers quickly integrated these volunteers, building them into a force that, while unconventional, carried a determination unmatched by any military training. This was not just a fight for borders or resources. It was a battle for survival, for dignity, for the right to exist without being threatened. Engineers and strategists worked tirelessly, analyzing data, simulating battles, and preparing for the worst. They refined their tactics, drawing on humanity's strength in adaptability and innovation. Every new challenge was met with a solution, every obstacle with a plan. Humanity's greatest minds turned their focus to one purpose, ensuring their people had every possible chance to survive and, if need be, to strike back. Across planets and colonies, people connected with loved ones, sending messages, and recording words they feared might be their last. Families became stronger than ever, bound by a shared understanding that this fight was not just for survival, but for the future of their children, for generations that might otherwise be lost. Humanity's resilience became its backbone, and in every corner of their territory, that resolve burned like a beacon. The time had come to face their enemies not with negotiation, but with unyielding strength. The moment arrived without fanfare, only the quiet hum of engines and the muted clicks of final weapon checks. In the vast emptiness of space, the human fleet floated, suspended in a void of tension, facing an enemy that had grown accustomed to their reluctance to fight. But this time was different. The ships bore a stark new insignia, a mark of unity, defiance, and readiness. Soldiers stood by, their faces shadowed but their eyes hard, carrying the weight of their choice and the lives that had brought them here. When the Derek fleet appeared on the radar, a hush fell over the humans. Their enemy came as they expected, grand, meticulously organized, and confident. Derek ships, sleek and predatory, cut through the dark like jagged steel, their formation tight and unyielding, a testament to their military discipline. They moved with the confidence of conquerors, as if this battle were just another in a long line of easy victories. To the Derek, humans were mere upstarts who had finally, foolishly, risen to meet their betters. The human commanders issued orders with calm precision. Each maneuver had been planned down to the smallest detail, but they knew that plans rarely survived first contact. The human fleet arranged itself, formations flexible and fluid, ready to adapt at a moment's notice. While Derek tactics were based on rigid hierarchies and tried-and-true strategies, humanity had prepared for something more: chaos, unpredictability, the very traits that had so often frustrated their allies and foes alike. Today, those qualities would become their strengths. The first shots were fired in a dazzling burst of light, missiles and energy beams streaking across the black canvas of space. The human ships shuddered under the impact, but they held their ground. Human gunners returned fire, hitting hard, targeting key areas of the Derek fleet where armor was thinner, where sensors were exposed. Their first volley took the Derek by surprise, catching gaps in their formation that no one had anticipated. The Derek line hesitated, faltered for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, humanity surged forward. The enemy quickly adapted, striking back with lethal efficiency. Explosions tore through the void as human ships crumbled under heavy Derek fire. Crews worked frantically to stabilize damaged systems, patching holes and rerouting power. In one corner of the battle, a small human destroyer took a direct hit to its main hull. Flames spread across the decks, but even then, the crew fought to keep their ship operational, determined not to yield. They continued firing, refusing to retreat. Amid the chaos, humanity revealed its first unexpected tactic. Smaller, faster ships broke formation, scattering across the battlefield in erratic patterns that threw the Derek off balance. These light craft darted between the larger vessels, forcing the Derek to divide their attention. It was unconventional and risky, relying on speed and maneuverability over sheer firepower. But it worked. The Derek, caught off guard, found their disciplined ranks disrupted, unable to keep pace with the humans' relentless attacks from every angle. In the heart of the fray, a squadron of human fighters swept in close to the enemy line, dropping charges in places that forced the Derrick to break formation. They had no choice but to respond, and in their attempts to regroup, they exposed key weak points. A human warship took advantage, unleashing a concentrated barrage that tore through an enemy frigate. The explosion lit up the void, a flash of light that filled the human forces with grim satisfaction. For the first time, they saw that the Derrick could be hurt, that their vaunted armor and precision tactics had cracks humanity could exploit. But the price was high. Human ships began to fall, one after another, overwhelmed by the sheer might of the Derrick fleet. Every loss was felt keenly. Human crews worked to the last breath, ensuring their comrades had cover, sending out final messages to loved ones back home, determined that their deaths would mean something. The sacrifices were immense. Each fallen ship marked a family, a life, a piece of earth that would not return. As the battle dragged on, the Derrick became visibly frustrated. What should have been a quick and decisive victory was devolving into a brutal grind. Every time they thought they had cornered the humans, another unexpected move threw them off balance. Humanity's adaptability became their weapon, as soldiers and commanders alike adjusted to the flow of combat with an ease that their opponents could not match. They fought without the constraints of rigid tactics, using every ounce of ingenuity and grit. Derrick commanders began to realize they had underestimated their foe. Humanity's unpredictability, its reliance on improvised tactics and relentless persistence, had caught them off guard. These were not the passive diplomats they'd once dismissed. The humans fought as if their lives depended on it, as indeed they did. In a final, desperate gambit, a group of human ships gathered, accelerating toward the center of the Derrick line. They were vastly outnumbered and outgunned, but they pushed forward without hesitation. The Derrick met them head-on, expecting an easy slaughter, but just as they prepared to unleash their full firepower, the human ship split, breaking in every direction. The Derrick fleet, caught between targeting multiple directions, hesitated just long enough for another wave of human ships to strike their flanks, battering their exposed sides with fire that cut deep. Victory did not come in a single sweeping moment, but in the slow realization that the Derrick were pulling back. Humanity had driven them to retreat, turning what was meant to be a swift annihilation into a hard-fought draw. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, held its ground as the Derrick fell back, regrouping at the edge of the battlefield. As the dust settled, humanity took stock of the damage. Ships lay in ruins, their twisted metal drifting through the void. Survivors drifted through the wreckage, stunned by the cost of the battle. The losses were staggering, but the humans were alive. Their opponents, shaken and retreating, had tasted a sliver of humanity's resolve. The survivors knew this victory was only the beginning, a brutal prelude to a war that would test everything they had. But they also knew, for the first time, that their strength lay not only in technology or tactics, but in the hearts of those willing to stand and fight, no matter the odds. The shift was unmistakable. Humanity, once seen as the fragile, diplomatic bridge in the alliance, now stood as a force that none could ignore. The bruising initial clash with the Derrick had awakened something in the human ranks, an ironclad resolve, backed by fierce determination and newfound unity. With every fallen comrade, humanity's determination grew, fueled by a desire not only to survive, but to reclaim the dignity they had lost and protect the future of their people. Plans for a counteroffensive had been in motion even before the last battle ended. Humanity knew they had to strike back with a ferocity that would shake their enemies and send a message to any who dared to doubt their resolve. Every ship, every piece of weaponry, every inch of ground had been carefully calculated, each unit meticulously prepared to take on what once would have been an unimaginable task. The plan was bold, ambitious, and risky, but humanity knew they had to push their advantage, to show that they would not retreat from this fight. In the cold void of space, the Derrick fleet lay in wait, confident their previous battle had weakened humanity. But what appeared on their scanners shattered that assumption. The human fleet arrived in waves, far larger and more formidable than before, each ship moving with precision and discipline that was a testament to the intense training and sacrifice made by every individual involved. The humans attacked from multiple directions, coordinating their assaults to encircle and overwhelm, using speed and coordination that took even the hardened derrick by surprise. As the counteroffensive roared to life, humanity's innovation became apparent. Rather than using straightforward assaults, human ships executed complex maneuvers, baiting derrick vessels into exposed positions, coordinating devastating ambushes with flawless timing. Engineers had equipped even their smallest vessels with advanced, experimental weapons designed to disorient and dismantle enemy ships. Every encounter with the derrick revealed the depth of human ingenuity. As humanity's fleet adapted on the fly, each ship operating with a level of strategic flexibility that rivaled anything the derrick could muster. But it wasn't just their technology that changed the course of the battle. It was the spirit of the people fighting. Soldiers, once civilians from ordinary lives, now stood shoulder to shoulder, their loyalty not to titles or ranks, but to each other, to the shared conviction that they were fighting for something worth dying for. A teacher fought alongside a former engineer, a farmer beside a scientist, each with a common purpose, each driven by the understanding that this battle wasn't just about survival. It was about defending their very right to exist. The derrick, for all their rigid tactics and superior weaponry, couldn't match the sheer force of humanity's will. Again and again, human soldiers took risks that seemed reckless, pressing forward with a passion that unsettled their enemies. Where the derrick saw only strategy and hierarchy, humans fought with heart. It was this relentless drive, this unity in the face of adversity, that caught the galaxy's attention. The same allies who had once doubted humanity watched in stunned admiration as humanity took on their foes with raw courage, their forces charging headfirst into battle even when the odds were steep. Allies who had wavered in their support began to reconsider, wondering if they had misjudged the people they had so long dismissed. Across the battlefield, humanity's impact was unmistakable. They won hard-fought skirmishes, pushing the derrick back, reclaiming ground and territories that had once been considered lost. But each victory came at a high price. The debris of fallen ships and the names of lost soldiers bore testimony to the cost of this newfound strength. Humanity's soldiers grieved their comrades, yet in every loss, their resolve deepened. Every sacrifice fueled the collective fire, a reminder of the peace they had once cherished but could no longer afford. Even as victories stacked up, the losses were severe. Humanity celebrated every success with a heavy heart, knowing that each gain represented lives given willingly, with no guarantee of a tomorrow. They knew their people weren't warriors by nature. They had fought only when left with no other choice. And yet, each battle reinforced the message that humanity's survival was no longer just an ideal. It was a mission. This resolve, born of sacrifice and loss, became a defining mark of humanity's spirit. For those watching from afar, the transformation of humanity was both inspiring and humbling. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's will to survive and the strength that emerged from their unity in suffering. The derrick and other skeptics now faced a force that was not only tenacious but calculated, an opponent whose combination of adaptability, ingenuity, and passion formed an unbreakable bond that no enemy tactic could shatter. They were no longer the diplomats who sought peace through compromise. They were a formidable adversary, and the galaxy was beginning to realize the cost of forcing humanity's hand. Yet humanity's ultimate goal remained the same. They fought not for conquest, but for the right to live without fear, to protect those they loved, to build a future where peace could once again be possible. Every victory, every step forward, was a reminder of the values that had guided them from the beginning. They had tried to extend a hand of peace, but now, with the hand forced into a fist, they would not let it fall until they had secured what they had set out to protect. And as the dust settled on each battle, as the stars bore witness to the trials of a species that had been pushed to its limits, humanity's legacy began to take shape, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as survivors, a people who had risen from adversity to meet the galaxy with a strength that had been tempered through the fires of conflict and the bonds of unbreakable unity. The galaxy had fallen silent, the final echoes of battle fading like distant thunder. For humanity, the war had been a crucible, a trial by fire that had forged them into something new. They returned not as conquerors, nor as the subservient members of an alliance that had once dismissed them, but as survivors, bearing the marks of resilience, unity, and a hard-won peace. Their victory was not one of domination, but a reclamation of dignity, their fierce stance having earned them a respect that even their harshest critics could no longer deny. It was not long before treaties were signed, uneasy hands shaken, and declarations made in councils where humanity's voice was now unmistakably valued. Former allies and enemies alike acknowledged that humanity had forever changed the balance of the galaxy, proving themselves capable of a strength that went beyond firepower and strategy. They had fought for their existence with a tenacity that commanded recognition, ensuring that peace would be maintained with the understanding that humanity would never again be underestimated. A fragile but hopeful peace settled across the stars, a peace forged in the memory of what had transpired. Back on Earth and across human settlements, the cost of that peace was honored in solemn ceremonies. The landscapes of cities bore scars of fallen comrades, but they also held new monuments, reminders of what humanity had overcome and what they had lost. In places where soldiers and civilians alike had stood their ground, statues rose bearing the names of those who had given everything. These were not grand structures of glory or conquest, but quiet tributes to lives cut short, to families that grieved, and to a collective memory that would not soon fade. They marked not just the end of a conflict, but the endurance of a people who had learned to defend themselves with unwavering conviction. In every ceremony, a shared sentiment resonated, a promise, unspoken but deeply felt, that humanity would always remember the price they had paid to earn their place. Veterans spoke of comrades lost and of battles fought not for power, but for the simple right to live free from fear. Families gathered, young and old alike, standing in silence before the monuments, their faces reflecting grief, pride, and resolve. As their eyes traced the names of the fallen, they understood that those lives had become symbols of an unbreakable spirit, one that would guide humanity forward. Across the galaxy, other species took note of this transformation. Once seen as a gentle, perhaps even naive race, humanity was now recognized as fiercely protective, bound by an extraordinary resilience. Where they had once been seen as diplomats, the galaxy now understood them as defenders, guardians of their own kind. The same patience that had once been mocked as weakness was now viewed with a wary respect, for all knew that humanity's tolerance, though deep, had limits. Every species, even former enemies, saw humanity in a new light, realizing that their restraint was not submission, but a choice that, when tested, could unleash a force both formidable and unyielding. As humanity rebuilt, they found themselves facing a new era. Their reputation had been rewritten, and where once they had sought to fit quietly within the framework of intergalactic politics, they now stood as a formidable equal. Other species approached them with newfound respect, some even seeking alliances in recognition of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. Humanity had transformed, not only in the eyes of others, but in their own self-understanding. They saw themselves now not merely as inhabitants of Earth, but as a people united across the stars, bound by shared history and a fierce commitment to protect their own. In the final reflection, humanity knew they had reached a point of no return. Their legacy was forever changed. They had shown that patience could coexist with power, that diplomacy could walk hand in hand with strength. They had proven that they could be both the voice of reason and a force of resistance. The galaxy would never again forget that quiet species from Earth, the one that had been pushed to its breaking point only to rise stronger, standing firm for the sake of peace and dignity. And so, as they entered this new age, humanity looked to the future with a mix of solemn pride and cautious optimism. They knew the cost of their journey, and they honored it, carrying forward the memories of those who had made the ultimate sacrifice. For they had learned, deeply and irrevocably, that peace was worth fighting for, and that the bonds they had forged in the fires of adversity would guide them through whatever lay ahead. No species, not friend nor foe, would ever forget the day humanity reached its breaking point. In that moment, they had not just defended their existence, they had reshaped their destiny, securing their place among the stars as survivors, warriors, and most of all, as a people who would endure.